All right. We are in 6.1. I'm going to close out these tabs on the top here because we don't need those. We are in 6.1, array creation and access. How many of you guys remember lists from Python? All right? Lists. Well, these aren't lists, but they're kind of like lists, but they're not, because we will actually go through array lists later. But these are arrays. The concept of it is explained here in the first example. It says to keep track of 10 exam scores, can you imagine having variables listed as score 1, 2, 3, etc.? And that's actually how I originally learned how to do something like that. I created all these variables and I was like losing track of the names of the variables and what each one stood for. And the more code I added, I had to think back to what variable name this was, which it works, but is it most efficient? And is it something we can add to in the future? What if we had 100 exam scores, right? I'm sure Veracross doesn't create a new variable every single time I go and enter a grade in, right? What can I do? So that would be a lot of variables. Most programming languages have a simple data structure for collection of related data that makes this easier. In many block-based programming languages like App Inventor and Scratch, this is called a list. In Java and many programming languages, this is called an array. Okay. If you forget what lists are, no worries. We're going to talk about arrays. An array is a block of memory that stores a collection of data items, also called elements, of the same type under one name. So like if I have, right, I'm looking back to Python here, right? If I have a list called courses, and in that list I have every single possible course that you can take here at AACS, would it make sense? And it says like AP Computer Science A, AP Computer Science Principles, Intro to Computer Science, and then randomly there's a class that just says 3. Would that make sense? Not really. Okay. So it has to all be the same type. In that instance I just used, they were all strings, right? You can't have like a string and then an int and then a double and a float and a Boolean and then another string and an int. This is for data types or data items, also called elements, of the same type. Arrays are useful when you have many elements of data of the same type that you want to keep track of. And the example I just used was a bunch of strings. What if you have a bunch of numbers, right? Like your grades. Okay. But you don't need to name each one. Instead, you can use an array name and a number called an index for the position of an item in the array. You can make arrays of ints, doubles, strings, and even classes. Think back to APCSP when even in TK Inter, we were making lists of buttons. You remember that? So then it was like selecting a button from the list, right? It was a way to classify and organize different potential selections. And the awesome thing about these is that you can iterate through them or loop through them, right? And we've done that before in the past in other intro, and I don't know if we did in intro as much, but in AP Computer Science Principles we did. Here's a fun video. It says Arrayland Dog Kennel.
You can easily create a name for 1, 2, or 3 values in Java. But what if you needed to store 100 or even 3 million values? Arrays are a go-to way of storing and accessing a large amount of the same types of values. Think of an array as a dog kennel.
Well, I was going to pause that there. Does that look like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that looks a little bit more complicated in creating a list in Python, right? Just looks different. It's not harder, but it's just different syntax. In the same way, in Python, it was just like print, and then you printed something out, or in in Java, system.out.println, and end it in a semicolon. So it's a little bit more, and we'll go through this and we'll explain it. Pause the video and now it won't start back up. It's a fun day. What if I like change the location of it? I'll just have to refresh the page. Let's see what happens. There we go. I'm not going to click anything this time.
Easily create a name for 1, 2, or 3 values in Java. What if you needed to store 100 or even 3 million values? Arrays are a go-to way of storing and accessing a large amount of the same types of values. Think of an array as a dog kennel. Once you've created it, you can keep as many dogs there as you've built the kennel to hold. Then you have access to each dog every time you visit the kennel. In Java, you can create arrays, store any type of data, and then have quick and convenient access to each item in that array. However, in a dog kennel, you can only store dogs. Likewise, once you've chosen what your array is going to consist of, it can't store anything else. For example, you couldn't store the string Georgia Tech in an array of integers. To access a value at a certain point in an array, you use an index, which tells Java where that point is. It's important to remember that arrays start at index 0, not 1, so be careful when choosing which item you want to access. Arrays are a great, simple way of storing large amounts of data points for user input. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. So, question about that. Well, I guess first starting off, yeah, I'm coming back here. First starting off, did you notice anything interesting in the way those were declared? Let's go back here and let's see here.
An array of integers.
Okay, I pulled this up here. Check this out. If I had int and it says tech int equals new int, isn't that kind of like the way that we were creating objects from classes? Right? Remember how we had like turtle myrtle equals new turtle, and then we put something inside the parentheses. Well, check this out. We have square brackets there. And down here, in order then to put, well, first it says, all right, we added 10 things into our array. And then eventually we placed each 10 of those 1 through 10. Okay. Let's move down here. It says an array is like a row of small lockers, except that you can't cram lots of stuff into it. You can only store one value at each locker. Okay. There's different lockers here. There's a pink one. Look at this. We got a pink one right there. Purple, yellow, pink, another purple, another. Is that yellow or is that orange? What do you think? I think it's yellow. Okay. You can't cram lots of stuff into it. You can only store one value in each. So it says you can store a value in an array using an index location. We all know what indexing is. We've used indexes before. Okay, the index is a location. Computers start counting at index what? 0. Okay, it says you can get or store a value from by using an index for your array. Arrays and lists in most programming languages start counting elements from the number 0. So the first element in an array is at index 0. This is similar to how strings are indexed in Java. Okay, the first character is at index 0. If you used App Inventor, you might remember that everything started at 1 instead of 0. We didn't use App Inventor, but if you remember looking at this, if you guys took APCSP on the exam, I'm not sure why they decided to do this, but on the APCSP, not this class, on the exam, they start counting at 1. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. I remember some of you took APCSP last year and you looked at me like I was crazy when I told you that we would start counting at 1. Okay. But Java, start counting at index 0, value 1, 1, 2. Okay. Can you think of another example of something that is like an array, like a row of lockers? They used dog kennels as an example. Anything else? Seats in a classroom. Be kind of weird if I had students sitting in the same seat. Right? What about like phones in a grid? Right? What if this was all just like a way to learn arrays? And that's the reason I put your phones over there. I don't know. I don't know. Could be like phones in a grid. Now, what if your phone was on? Would that fit in the grid? It would not. Your phone is not allowed to be. The Mr. Danza, there's a phone missing over there. What's going on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, because I turned my into the.
Oh, see how it is. Had to trade it. So, you know, it will only require a certain data type. Phones in the grid. Not any other examples that you can think of? Like there's only a certain amount of. What about like parking spots? Right? Parking spots. Some people like take up 2 parking spots. That's always fun. Declaring and creating an array. When we declare a variable, we specify its type and then the variable name. To make a variable into an array, we put square brackets after the data type. For example, int scores means we have an array called scores that contains int values, right? This was how we create a variable, right? We all remember this. We did this frequently. We still do it frequently. Now, this is how you make an array of integers. So is that far off? Not really, right? We've declared it, but have we initialized it? Remember, if we wanted to initialize, let's say we wanted to initialize score here. Int score, let's say we wanted score to be starting off at 0. How would I initialize score? It'd be int score, then what? Equals 0, and then the semicolon. So if I want to initialize an array, probably need an equal sign, right? Now, it says the decorations do not create the array. The array are objects in Java. So any variable that declares an array holds a reference to an object. If the array hasn't been created and you try to print the value of the variable, it will print null, meaning it doesn't reference any object yet. Okay, we haven't told it what to do yet. There are 2 ways to create an array. You can use the keyword new to get new memory, or use an initializer list. Let's go through each of these.
Array nums a. So nums a is a variable that can hold something of type int array. So nums is a variable that holds type int. Says nums a gets the value of a new int array with 6 elements. So they have created an int array with 6 elements. That equal sign is the last part. So num a gets the value of my new int array with 6 elements. And those are all zeros. It's just 6 int variables whose next to each other. And they all default to 0. The next line says nums b gets the value, and then in curly braces, it's 31, 64, 11, 100. So the left-hand side says int array nums b. That's a variable that can hold a reference to an int array. And the right-hand side, we can only do this when we're first declaring an int array. We just need the the right-hand side gives me the exact values at once. So I get those exact values in my interface created. And you can only use this curly brace trick of giving it the exact values when you first create it. So then the assignment says nums b, that's my variable. That gives it the value of that interarray that I created with those curly braces. So this is kind of a shortcut. We can create interarrays in one of these ways. The first one is like we do with nums anywhere. We just told it the size and you got a default of 0 for all the elements. And the second one is with the curly braces. And there we gave it all the values in it. They just figured out that it should be like 4 because we gave it 4 values.
Okay, so if we're looking at this example, okay, I'm looking at the bottom here, int nums a, new int 6, what this did was it created 6 parking spots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What was the default value it put in the parking spot? 0. That's the default. Now, let's say you didn't want to do that, and you're like, I don't want 6 values of 0. I want 4, and I want to be specific, right? Let's say these are the ages of people in a room, right? 31, 64, 11, and 100. So the way they did that was just a little different. They put these curly braces on here, right? Curly braces separated and then ends in a semicolon. Okay. We'll first start off by talking about new. We've used new before. Like I said, turtle, myrtle equals new turtle. When we were creating objects, right, from our classes, we would write the class name and then we would initialize it and then say new and then pass it values, which would then be accepted in the constructor class or constructor method that we create. It says to create an empty array after declaring the variable, use the new keyword with the type and the size of the array, the number of elements it can hold. This will actually create the array in memory. Okay. You can do the declaration and the creation all in one step. See the string array names below. The size of an array is set at the time of creation and cannot be changed after that. Now, let's think back. In Python, if we made a list and we wanted to add things to our list, could we do that? Yeah, we could do that, right? We create lists and then add things to it by the .append method. I don't know if you guys remember that. You could take things out, .delete. You could pop out the last one, .pop. But check this out. In Java for arrays, the size of an array is set at the time of creation and cannot be changed after that. So you might not want to create an array for some things. That might be something called an array list. And we'll talk about those in Unit 7. Yes.
In the video you showed, it gave 2 ways on how to initialize a list. For the second way where you use the curly braces, could you add on to that since it?
No, that's the only time, right? So the question was in the curly braces. So let me see if I understand your question correctly. What if I decided to do it like this, right? Could I add something to that array later? No, you cannot, right? So you have to know exactly how many things. So like, let's say, I don't know, let's say this class, we have 11 students in this class, right? And let's say I want to keep track of each of your progress. And let's say I want to keep track of all the names of students in my class. Now, if I want to create a data structure that just keeps the names of everyone in this class, do you think I can store them in an array? There's 11 people in this class. Do you think I can just set an array to 11, create 11 parking spots, and just put each of you in there? What's something that could happen? Someone could drop the class. What else is really rare but could happen? Josh did it last year. Join the middle of the school year. What if there's a transfer that comes in and just says, hey, I've been taking APCSA at my school and second semester I'm transferring in. Can I join? Right? So I might not want to create an array because things could change. Would you say that in the world that we live in, would you say that things change more than they are constant? Yeah, things are changing nonstop. That's why we create, it's good to be flexible and realize that maybe it might not be best to create an array for everything. Here's an example. Okay. Once again, the size of the array is set at the time of creation and cannot be changed after that. I can obviously go back in my code and change it, but I can't, like, if the user is using the program, they can't like add something to it. Or code later on throughout saying, hey, let's append this. I can't add stuff to my list. I would have to go back and change every instance. So it says high scores, new int 5. So let's say you only want to keep track of the 5 high scores, okay, in a game. So I create the array high scores. Sorry, I declare the array variable. I then create the array. But this is doing it in one step. Which one do you think would be the way that I would prefer? To do it in 2 steps or do it in 1 step? Probably 1, right? Just how you would do it in 1 step. And once again, doesn't this look similar to what we were doing before? When we declare turtle, Myrtle equals new turtle, and then we pass in something in here. Or if I created a class and I was creating an object of that class, you'd write the class name. We are using the string class, right? The string with square brackets. Check for understanding. Which of these following creates an array of 10 doubles called prices? Okay, let's look at the first one. Int. Well, no, we're not looking for an int. This one might be the answer there, right? What about C? That wouldn't work because that doesn't even include number 10. D would not work because it doesn't follow this format. I'm going to highlight this one if you look on the board right here, up here, right? See where it says string names? Okay, that's the format we're following, which would be what letter?
B.
B, as in boy. Correct. In the following code, add another 2 more array declarations. One that creates an array of 5 doubles called prices, another 5 strings called name. Okay, so line 8, I'm going to go on line 8. An array of 5 doubles. So I'm going to say double, square, brackets, prices, equals, new, double, and we need 5. And we just created an array that would give us 5 possible parking slots to put stuff in. When I was first creating my array of cell phone holders over there, right? I thought, how could I do this? How many should I make? Well, I teach 25 students. My max actually has 26, right? So this class is my min of 11. I wouldn't create 11 parking spots. That wouldn't make sense. So I created 3 rows of 10, 30, because you never know. So when you're creating this, in this example, I'd say string, and it says names is new string, and we need 5 strings. So let's look at our code. We have this main method. We have this int high scores. It's going to give us 10 high scores, prices, 5 price. I'm not sure what the prices are for storing, and then 5 names. All right. Let's run it. Let's see if we were right. Cool. We passed. It says, note, array elements are initialized to default values like the following. So in this example up here, remember when we didn't declare what we wanted inside of it? In this example right here, new int 6, as well as this example right here, we created int 10, double 5, string 5. What goes in there? We didn't specify. Well, for ints, the default value is 0. For doubles, 0.0. Boolean is false. And for string, it's null. Null, 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 null. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Notice they start counting at 0. In Java, each element, or also called item, in the array, each has its own number, starts at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Initializer lists to create arrays. This was the other way we talked about. Another way to create an array is use something called an initializer list. Okay. This allows you to assign values. You can initialize or set, and that's another word for it, the values in the array to a list of values in curly braces when you create it, like below. In the case you don't specify the size of the array, it will be determined from the number of values that you specify. So here's an example here. Int high scores, and we set 5 values. So we couldn't later on add more values to it. This is where we set it, 99, 98, 98, 98, or 88, 68. Looks like Sophia didn't get the highest score there. Jamal got a 99, Emily got a 98, Destiny got a 98, Mateo got an 88. I'm just assuming these correlate. Maybe I'm wrong here. But you have string names, right? And these are listed. Make sure to note that they are inside quotation marks. Fun stuff. When you create an array of a primitive type like int with initial value specified, space is allocated for the specified number of items of that type, and values in the array are set to the specified values. What does that mean? When you create an array of an object type with initial values, space is set aside for the number of object references. The objects are created and the object references are set so the objects can be found. Let's check this out. So int is a primitive type. We talked about data types in the beginning of the year, but string actually is an object from the string class. Notice that string is capitalized. You ever wonder, why is string capitalized and int, double, boolean isn't? Right? Some people have asked that in other classes. And the answer I give them most of the time is you'll kind of find out later, but just know that there is a difference. And here's where we introduce that difference. There are primitive types, int, boolean, double, float. There are object types, okay, from the string class. So here's really what happens. In primitive types, in 0, you have 99, 1, 98, 2, 98, 3, 88, 4, 68. And we are referencing each value here for names because they're strings. Okay, it says watch the following video, which shows an array of string objects with a physical model of Java memory.
when we use the assignment statement, those go into the equal sign. If we say str1 gets the value of this new string t, that creates a little control that references that new string. When we create str2 and don't give it a value, we just get one of these null references. So now it's not referencing any strings. It's just null. If we make a string array with length 3, that creates 3 variables that can each hold a reference to a string. They look a lot like str1 and str2 variables over there. So on the left hand of that, we said that it had the variable name AR. So that one we needed this type of variable because it holds a reference to an array, just like the references to an int array. And if we say string array ARR gets the value of a new string array with 3 elements, that assigns a reference points to that array. It's important to note that all 3 of those variables inside of the string array are null. You can imagine we could set them. So I'll make a new string for hello, that's the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, I'll say array at index 1, so 0, 1, 2, is going to reference that hello. I could also say that array index 2, so it's 0, 1, 2, gets the value of str1. So remember when we use get, we get a copy of what's in this variable. So we got a copy of the variable there, which is a reference that points to team. And so here we got a copy of that variable, we got a reference that points to team. I'm sorry, it's a little distracting that this was paper and this was plastic, but I ran out of this. So remember, when we made this new array, we hadn't created any strings and we hadn't set any of those values. So they all started at that default null, just like our string2 did. Here's the code. See if you can trace it just like we did in the video.
Okay. Array length. Arrays know their length, how many elements they can store. It is a public read-only instance variable, so you can use dot notation to access the instance variable. Array name dot length. Dot notation is used. Dot notation is using a variable name followed by a dot and then the instance variable or property name of a method name or a method name. Try the following. It says try running the code below to see the length. So let's look at the code. We have public static void main string args in our class test2. We have int high scores 99, 98, 98, 88, 68. And then a print out high scores dot length. What do you think will print out? What is the length of it? Okay, so now check this out. Yes, 5 is correct. It says try adding another value to the high scores initializer list and run it. So another value I'll add at the end, let's say 72. I just put a random number. You can put any number in there. Okay. So the length of it is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The main thing that they want to let you just be aware of is this dot length from this array lets you know how many values are inside of it, or how many items there are. Note that length is an instance variable and not a method, unlike the string length method. So you don't add parentheses after length. However, if you use parentheses after length during the exam, you won't lose points. The length instance variable is declared as a public final int. Public means you can access it, and final means you can't change the value. Which index is for the last element of an array called high scores? Okay, what index? Now, if you want to find the length, right? Check this out. If I want to find the length of this, this gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and printed out 6. But if I wanted to find out what index the last value is, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be the length minus 1. So which index is for the last element of an array called high score, it would be length minus 1. It's very common to use that and see that when you're looking through arrays, or like we were using lists in Python. I remember when we did an APCSP, the Wheel of Fortune project, when we were looking at a list of values, you had to use the length minus 1. Okay. It says access and modify array values. To access the items in an array, we use an indexed array variable, which is the array name and the index inside of a square bracket. Remember that an index is a number that indicates the position of an item in a list, starting at 0. Here's a comparison of App Inventor, APCSP, and Java. Okay, so it shows you how to access. In Python, we put the number inside. So this is very similar. This isn't necessarily just Python. This is how APCSP writes it, which is very similar to Python. Java does the same. So let's actually use this. Okay. An index variable in array name index can be used anywhere a regular variable can be used. For example, to assign a new value or to get a value, right? Two examples. So if I want the first high score, to assign it to 99, it would be, since it starts at 0, the first high score would be 0. High scores inside the square bracket 0 is assigned 99. With a semicolon. To print the first element of the array, you'd print high scores and then a 0 here, right? So that would print out that value. So it should print 99. The first value in an array is stored at index 0. We know this. We've done this before. This is nothing new. Okay, and the index of the last value is the length of the array minus 1. So an array in order to access the first element is 0. In order to always access the last element in that array, no matter how long it is, it's length minus 1. Okay. Use array name index to access or modify array items. Watch the following video, which shows a physical model of Java memory setting array values.
When I run the class, that was the first line of int array nums gets the value of new int with 4 elements. So that's creates a variable named nums. And it's a variable that can give reference to an int array. The right hand side, new int array 4 makes a 4 element. That's just like
I'm gonna have Mrs. Danza make me some of these so I can demonstrate with you guys, right?
the nums references that 4 element. The next line says nums at index 0, so I follow the reference to nums index 0. Reference to index 0. Start at 0. Nums at index 0. Get the value of 31. Next, nums, so we follow that at index 1, gets the value of 64. Next, nums, so we follow at index 2, gets the value of 11. The next line, nums, by reference at index 3, gets the value of 100. And those last 4 lines, we could have scrambled the order and we still would have gotten these 4 elements. We didn't have to put it in left, right?
What if I just taught you guys Java with no computers? And I said that the whole time. That'd be impressive. And you guys had to write all of your programs all by hand. Well, guess what? On the AP exam, you have to write your free response questions and write your code by hand. So guess what? We're going to start practicing soon.
Yo.
Writing our code by hand. If I were to tell you right now I'm not asking you to do it, but if I were to tell you to take out a piece of paper and say, all right, write a main method that prints out hello, Mr. Danza. Right? That should be easy, right? Right? Write a main method. How do you write a main method? What would you write? Public static void main string args, right? The curly braces, you got to include the curly braces in there. That's the AP exam.
4 questions for half of the score.
There are 4 questions that are half of your score. So guess what we're going to start practicing in second semester? I didn't want you to start in first semester, right? But maybe you might get into class and I might have a nice little warm up where we all just, you know, or maybe I'll just call someone on the board and be like, that'd be fun. See, he'd like it. He'd like it. Greg likes it. Greg approved. He approved. We're going to do it. Okay. Fill in the blank to include code to access the cars array. Okay. Access cars array to get Volvo. Okay. String V is assigned. What would I type? How would I get Volvo? Cars and then what? And it would be value 1, right? This is element 0. This is element 1. This is element 2. Let's try this. Correct. We're going to get tons of practice in second semester. You guys are going to have so much fun second semester. Okay. Fill the blank with code to access the cars array. Note the semicolon is provided for you after the box. It says set the first item of the cars array to be Toyota. Well, yeah, you can set it though, right? So we would say cars. What a first item? So it would be 0. So we're changing Honda to Toyota. I have a Honda. I like my Honda. 2013 Honda Accord.
Wait, how's it like 0 if Toyota's not the thing?
So we're not adding like an item or an element to our array. We're just changing. So if I were to print out cars now, it were to print out Toyota, Volvo, and BMW. Does that make sense? If you want to keep track of the top 5 highest scores in a game and the names of the people with those scores, you could use 2 parallel arrays. Okay. One array could keep track of the scores and the other the names. I kind of hinted at that. Where were we? Was it up there? Yeah, up here, right? I said, oh yeah, Jamal 99, Emily 98, Destiny. You see how like they have the same number? I just assumed, I was like, hey, Jamal got the 99 because they kind of lined up there, right? 99, Jamal, 98, Emily, 98, Destiny. One array could keep track of the scores, the other could be tracking the name. You have to make sure to keep them in the same order and the same index. So that way you can use corresponding names and scores. Try out the following code, which has 2 parallel arrays, high scores and names. Can you print out Mateo's score? Can you change Sophia's score to 97? Can you change the arrays so they have 6 elements and add your name and score and print them out. Okay, so let's do one thing at a time. Can you print out Mateo's score? Well, let's run it. Okay, so print out Mateo's score. So I could say, we should copy this. Do you agree? We should copy this, paste it. What index is Mateo? 0, 1, 2, 3. Mateo has a score of, what else do I need to change in line 12 here? Mateo has a score of, what would this print out right now? It would say Mateo has a high score of what? Well,
Whoa, 98.
98, right? It should say Mateo has a high score of what? 0, 1, 2, 3, which is 88. Right? So changing that index. Okay? We did that one. Can you print Mateo's score? Can you change Sophia's score to 97 using an assignment statement in the code? Okay, so maybe down here, we want to change Sophia's score. So Sophia was the last one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can say high scores. It was 4, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. High scores 4 is 97. And the last thing it wanted me to do was, it says, can you change the arrays so that they have 6 elements? So my high score, of course, is going to be 100. I'm going to add my name to the list. Okay, and then it says print them out. Change the arrays so they have 6 elements and add your name and score and print them out. So I'll copy this line right here. Wells, I really like your haircut, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it looks good. I think everyone in the class should follow Wells's lead. I'll bring my clippers in. We'll do it the day before the AP exam.
I like
Smart man. All right. I used to have long hair. Used to have hair back in my day.
cut your hair down.
I went to the store yesterday and I was like, back in my day, we used to have plastic bags that we'd be able to get for free from the store. Not anymore. Went to Wawa. Like, sorry, I got to charge you for plastic bags. I didn't buy plastic bags. Yeah. Back in my day, I had a lot more hair. This is what it wanted though. I want you to print it out, write your name. Notice I added this line in here. I didn't verbalize it, but system.out.println names 5. There you go. What happens if you try to access an element that is not there? Try to access a high score of index 7 and see what happens. So let's try accessing names 7. What do you think will happen? We get this error called array index out of bounds. If you're playing basketball and the ball goes out of bounds, what does that mean? Well,
Oh.
Jordan just takes off his penny and just says, all right, special teams, balling out, giving up. Okay, well, when something goes out of bounds, that means that it's no longer in play and doesn't deal with the game, then stops. So the program literally stopped and said your index went out of bounds. It says index 7 out of bounds for length 6. It told us. Some people, especially when they first start programming, especially in APCSP, come to me with their error and be like, Mr. Danza, I don't know what happened. And I read this line right here. Java.lang array index out of bounds exception, Java line 14. I'm like, oh, it literally tells you. Make sure to read the error. I fixed it back to, wait, what was it? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I forgot that was 5. Why did I say 7 then? Why did I pick 7? That's weird. I thought that I had more elements in the list, but in the array. All right. One powerful feature in the array data abstraction is that we use variables for the index. As long as a variable holds an integer, we can use it as an index. Okay. So you can say, all right, the index is 3. I want high scores, the value of that index. Notice I pass a variable in there. This is not anything new. When we use loops, we typically pass that value in to access every single item, which I believe that is that 6.2? Yeah, look, 6.2, traversing arrays with for loops. Love for loops. Okay, I jumped ahead there briefly. Here's a fun string array of image file names. The following code displays an online image using an HTML tag. Note that this just works in active code window, which interprets HTML. Let's run it. That is a picture of a, well, it says cow, kitten, puppy, pig, or reindeer. Is that cow? It might be a cow that sees a haircut, right? Do cows have horns? Great question. Great question. It says, can you change the index variable value so it prints out the puppy image? Okay, the index. So 0, 1, 2. Let's print out the puppy image. Raise your hand if you like pugs. You like pugs? I think they're all right. I'm not the biggest fan. Favorite dog, I like huskies. Right. There's this one down the road. It's like a Malamute husky. It's like super like fluffy. See it walking around all the time.
I'm gonna try the kitten.
What's that? You wanna try the kitten one? The kitten one's better. Are cats better than dogs, Wells? You don't know. What do you think? Would you rather have that cat or the dog? You rather have the cat?
You can scroll down, cat is on the hand.
Cat's on the hand, holding the cat. Let's see what the pig is. There's a bird on the pig swimming.
That's the swimming pig.
That's what?
Like in Bahamas, people swim with pigs.
Really? Pig Island.
Oh, it's called Pig Beach. Yeah, Pig Beach. Like, pigs on the beach.
Really? Interesting. And then there's reindeer. Let's see what the reindeer look like. It's not a reindeer. Boo. All right. So we were asked to try all of them. What indices did you need to use? You need to use from 0 to length -1. Then try using a random number for the index instead. So we can say int math dot random times, and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images. Okay, the max is whatever the list is. So I'll say images dot length -1, right? Because that's the biggest index that we can have. Let's see if that runs. I'll zoom out. We'll run it a few times. There's the pig. Let's see if we get the reindeer to show up. There's a dog. There's the cow. There's a cow again. So we had math.random times, we had images.length, and we subtracted 1, right? Because we wanted to make sure that it didn't, like, if we would have just said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we would multiply it by 5, we may have gotten the value 5, and 5 would be an index out of bounds. Programming challenge. Use the active code window below to create 4 parallel arrays and initialize them using initialization lists that represent the data below. Remember that the order of these arrays has to match so they can have the same index. So China, Beijing, Chinese, China.jpg, Egypt, Cairo, Arabic, Egypt. So the countries, the capitals, the language, and the map. Raise your hand if you've ever been to the UK. Anyone? No? Mexico? No one's been to Mexico? Kenya? Yeah, that's right. Kenya. Japan? My wife used to live in Japan. India? No. Germany? Anybody? Nobody's been to Germany? France? You been to France? Nice. Egypt? China? Wells never been to China. Never been. He didn't raise his hand. There you go. What else? You guys all right? You've been to Canada? Has anyone else left the country before? Where you been?
Dubai.
Dubai. So United Arab Emirates. Nice. How was that? Anyone else? What countries you been to? Singapore? Belgium? Malaysia? Okay. Anyone else? Where have you been? Nice. Bunch of Central American. Says you're encouraged to add additional countries, capital, and language names that match in position in the parallel arrays to represent your family origins or places you would like to visit. Okay. Let's first do step 1. Create 4 parallel arrays. Okay. So if we look back, right? how do we create our array? If you look at this as an example, and if we're just going to fill this in, right? Because we have a bunch of strings. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go down to 1 down here. So I'm creating in line 14. And I'll say string. The first one is countries. And the countries are going to be China, Egypt, France, Germany, India, Japan, Kenya, Mexico, United Kingdom, and United States. Okay. So China, Egypt, France, Germany, India, Japan, Kenya, Mexico, United Kingdom, and United States. Now, one way to make sure that we include the same number and not mix this up, right? We want to make sure that we don't add in the wrong number of values. One way to do that is to copy it and paste it on the line below. So that way, look, we know that we have the right amount already starting off here. So like the capital of China is Beijing. Make sure you're spelling it right. Capital of Egypt is Cairo. Capital of France, Paris. Germany is Berlin. India is New Delhi. Japan is Tokyo. Kenya is Nairobi. Then we have Mexico is Mexico City. United Kingdom is London. And the United States is Washington, D.C. Is that how they wrote it? Yeah, Washington, D.C. Okay. Then I'm going to paste again. Check this out. Countries. I should have changed this in line 16 right here. I should have changed countries capitals. And 17 should be what? What should I put? What should I name this? Languages. So I have Chinese, Arabic. In France, they speak French. In Germany, they speak German. Hindi, Japanese, Swahili, Spanish. Did they do English? Yeah. United Kingdom, English, United States, English. And the last one is file names. Maybe I do this for the last one. Maybe I'll do something different. Maybe I'll copy these file names. Right? Just like in above up here, notice that the file names were inside quotation marks, right? So we have to add these file names in quotation marks. So what if I do this? What if in line 18, I write string And then I'll say, maybe I'll call this images. And then I'll open and close my curly braces. And then I'll paste all the file names in there. But what I have to do is I have to go in and add quotation marks, right? So quotation marks there, quotation marks there, quotation marks there. I know it's tedious going through and doing this, but we want to make sure this works properly. All right. So that was the method that I chose to use. Also, make sure to end with a semicolon. Okay, so I have 4 arrays. I have countries, capitals, languages, and images. Pick a random number up to the length of one of the arrays and save the variable index. So let's see. You can have your teacher share it as teaching CSAwesome Google group, whatever. Okay, step 3. Choose a random number using math.random and the length and save it in a variable called index. Okay, so I can say int index. Then if you look back to what we did in order to find the random value when we were finding the cow, the kitten, and all that, remember the code we wrote right here? Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy it. I'm going to bring that down right over through here. I'm going to paste it. Pick a random number up to the length of one of the arrays. I'll just keep images there, yeah? Okay, so index. Print out the info in each array using the random index. Okay, so we'll do system.out.println. And we'll say, sorry, I clicked enter there. But what we'll do is, if you look back in the last example too, when we printed this out, we just put everything right on top of each other. So I'm going to print out system.out.println. I'm going to say countries, and then index plus capitals, index plus languages, index plus images, and whatever our index is. All right, so we're going to pick back up where we left off with in 616. Down here where we were at, we went through and added our array for countries. Notice that we use curly braces in here as well. Our array for capitals, languages, and images. We went through and did steps 2 and 3, and the part where we were like just finishing up class, and I was looking at the time trying to hurry up and finish it. And that process didn't clearly explain this. But what we needed to do was, if we look at the class, we needed to go create an object from the countries class. And by doing that, we wrote countries and we named it object new countries. And by using that, we were able to write the print HTML image method that ran, and they did all the work and did all this. You don't need to know what any of that does. You just need to know that this prints out the HTML image. And this was originally in comments, and we just took the comments out. When we ran it, it gave us Japan, Tokyo, and they speak Japanese. If I run it again, picks our random country, it says Mexico, Mexico City, Spanish. And you could make that look nicer if you wanted to and add spaces and all, but we don't need to. Okay, completed, well done. Design an array of objects for your community. Nope. Says in unit 5, we did it. But we're just not going to do it. Right? This is just extra practice. And I want to keep us on pace. And we didn't do it with unit 5 either. I forgot we didn't do it. And then Greg reminded me we didn't do it. And it's something that if you really want to do it, you can. But it's just extra practice, reinforcing the same concepts. So the community challenge, right? Does it make me do it down here? We'll figure out. If we have to do something in there, then we'll do it. But yeah, it says copy your class from lesson 5-6. So even if I wanted to, couldn't even do it. So I don't want to do it. So we're not going to do it. Okay, 618. This was just a summary of things we went through. We talked about initial values and how each type are initialized differently when using the new keyword. We're going to use arrays all throughout this unit. So arrays. 619 AP practice. Okay, it says we will see in the next lesson that the index of an array is often a variable named I that is used in loops to reverse an array. In Python, whenever we wrote our for loop, I always wrote for I in and then whatever the list was that I was looking at. So with that, it's similar. We'll talk about traversing arrays in the very next lesson, not in this one. But it says, for example, array I -1 refers to the previous element right before whatever element that you're talking about, or +1, array +1 is the next element. Okay, consider the following method. Given an array is initialized to 4, 10, 15, which of the following represents the contents of the array after a call to mystery array 2? Okay. An array is initialized at 4, 10, 15. Okay. So you're passing in the array and then the int 2. So we'll read this. So the whatever I is in here, so I would be 2. We're passing in this array. What this means right here is this is the 4, 10, 15, and this is 2. Okay, so in this array, we're looking for index 2. Okay, index 2 is assigned. Okay, index 2 is assigned whatever was in 2 - 1, which is index 1 times 2. So index 1, because 2 - 1 is 1. Index 1 is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. Okay, so what this all came out to was A1, so index 2 is assigned whatever was in index 1, which was 10, times 2, which is 20. So index 2 is now 20. So instead of 4, 10, 15, it should read 4, 10, 20. See if I'm right. Correct. Might take a while to just read through that. We'll get some practice here. Consider the following method. Which of the following code segments appearing in the same class as the mystery method will result in array 2 having the contents 5, 10, 20? So they have, it says I have my int a, which is going to be an array, pass in the array. I'm going to pass in an int value called I, and as well as an int value called value. I have ai plus 1 equals ai plus the value, and then return a. So let me just wrap my head around this first. Which of the following code segments appearing in the same class as the mystery method will result in array 2 having these? Okay, so we're passing in array 1. Array 1 has the values 5, 10, 15. And in this, so array 1's being passed in 0 and 10. Let's try this out. So if I have, I'll go through A. I'm writing this out because I need to, or else I'm going to mess things up. All right. I have, I'm going through one step. I is starting off at 0. So 0 plus 1 is going to be 1. So A of 1, right, is equal to a whatever the 0th value was. The 0 value in this array right here is 5. So it would be 5 plus whatever the value is. The value in this array is 10. So 5 plus 10 is going to be assigned whatever. 5 plus 10 is 15. So it would not have the contents result. It would be 5, 15, 20 instead of 5, 10, 20. So moving on to the next one. Okay, we have 5, 15, 20. Array 1 is being passed in, and the value of I is 0, and the value of value is 0. Okay, so let's go through and do this. So I is 0, 0 plus 1 is 1. So A1, A of index 1 is going to be A, remember I is 0. So whatever the 0th index is there, in this case down here, it is 5. So we're going to deal with whatever 5 is. 5 plus the value 15, or sorry, plus whatever the value is. In this case, the value is 0. So 5 plus 0 is 5. So index 1, which is the second index, will be changed to the value of 5. In this case, that doesn't work because this is a 0 index 5. It's looking for 0 index 10, not 5, 5, 20. Next one, okay? Like I said, if I don't write these out, I'm going to end up messing this up. Can't do a lot of math in my head. So I have right here 5, 10, 15 as my values. And then I'm passing in for I is going to be 1 and value is going to be 10. Okay, let's look at C. So if I have I plus 1, I was 1. So now 1 plus 1, we're putting the value in A2 equals A1 plus whatever the value was. Okay, A1 is going to be 10. And the value that's presented here is also 10. Okay, so in index 2, the value is going to be 20, which would change this to 5, 10, 20. It's looking for 5, 10, 20. So I would say C is my answer. Let's see if I'm right. Correct. Okay. Hey, look, that's me writing this stuff out. And on an exam, you're going to have to write this out if you're not good at doing math in your head. It can be painful doing some of this in your head. Writing it out makes it a lot easier. And by tracing it. The arrays game. Try the game below to practice arrays. Right? Click on, it says over here, right here where it says arrays. Click on that. It says click only on the cells that are printed. Okay, so let's read what it wants us to do. It says click on the element of the star array that would be printed out by the given code. Since this index would it be just the first one? Yeah. Index 7, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Last one. Again. 5, so it would be 6, 5. Someone cheated. This is too easy. 6, 2, 2, 6. It's just saying it didn't really specify very well that this right here is an array, and you just try to find the right index of the array. So this is index 0, index 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd click there. 5, 6, click there. 7, click there. Okay. Loops. I don't know if it restarts. Oh, here you go. You can try some. Oh, here we go. This makes things a little easier or a little better, I feel like. 2D arrays, looping through arrays. So if you click these, they'll make them harder. Wonder what labels does. Oh, labels was the easy version, I guess. All right. You've attempted 17 out of 19 activities on this page. I wonder why. I'm just going to go back and click those buttons. There you go. I attempted them. If you want to go back to them, that's great. Oh, there you go. 19 out of 19. So we're not going to go through that. Like I said, for the sake of time, I think we already got this. I want to move on to the next ones. If you want to go back to it, be my guest. Okay. Hopefully we're able to get through this today. Traversing arrays with for loops. It says index variables. In the last lesson, we mentioned that you can use a variable for the index of an array. You can even do math with that index and have an arithmetic expression inside the square brackets right below. Okay. What does the code above print out? You can follow it. Now, okay, we look at this right here. My high scores are 10, 9, 8, and 8. We would create a variable called index and assigned it 3. And we said, what's the high score of index? Index would be 0, 1, 2, 3, right? We want to go ahead and assign that to 11. So it would take 8, overwrite it with 11. Then if we were to print this out, right? What's the high score? It would print out the high score of index 3, and the high score of index 3 would be 11. Then if we were to print out the high score of 3 minus 1, that would be index 2. So 0, 1, 2, and it should print out 8, right? And then it goes and does exactly what I just did, right? We overwrote 8 with 11 in index 3, but then kept the 8 that was in index 2. It says, what do you think the following code will print out? First, trace through it on paper, keeping track of the array and the index variable. Then run it to see if you're right. Okay, I'm definitely going to use paper. Okay, starting off, it says I have a class called test1, my main method. My names are Jamal, Emily, Destiny, Mateo, and Sophia. I have an index 1. Okay. Printing out, it says system.out.println names 1 minus 1 is 0. So name 0 is Jamal. So Jamal is printed out. Then we add 1 to the index. So our index was 1, but now our index is 2. Now I'm printing out names index 2. So names 2 would be 0, 1, 2. And I'd be printing out Destiny. Okay. Then I'm going to print out names. The index is 2 divided by 2 is 1. So names 1, if I'm printing that out, would be Emily. Then I'm taking names, whatever index we're at, the index is still 2, and I'm changing whatever's in index 2 to Rafi. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, Destiny now becomes Rafi. So it now goes Jamal, Emily, Rafi, Mateo, Sophia. Okay. We're going to subtract 1 from the index. So the index is now back to 1. And now we're going to print out whatever the index is. The index is 1 plus 1, which is 2. And print out the names that are in 2. The name that's in 2, 0, 1, 2. So I'm printing out Rafi. So what I predicted was, and I'll write it down here. My prediction is it will print out Jamal, and then Destiny, Emily, and then Rafi. Let's see if I'm right. Jamal, Destiny, Emily, Rafi. That's what we got. All right. 622. Now, I don't know why, like, no one in their right mind is going to write code like this, right? But it's purposely just to like get you to trace your code and write things out. Like I said, for me, I literally wrote down index 3 times, crossed it out, went through it, and I'm tracing through. That's really bad code. You wouldn't write code like that, but it wants to make sure you can trace it and read it. For loops. We've gone through for loops in Python before. Have we gone through for loops? We've done while loops in this class. We didn't do for loops? Oh, that was probably to loop through a string, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have. I always mix up because I'm teaching different AP classes. You'll see me sometimes even write like Python code when I should be writing Java code. That's just a curse you have to live with. We can use iteration with a for loop to visit each element of an array. This is called traversing the array. Basically, traversing is like looping through an array. When I taught a different curriculum, it was called Project Lead the Way. There was a project called Traversing with Turtles. And it was, you had a turtle using the turtle class, and you had to make it like do things in a loop. So that's what like traversing with turtles, making turtles go in a loop. Whenever I see traversing, I think back to that lesson. But really, you're using a loop to go through arrays. Traverse means to just go all the way through, check out every item in it. Just start at index 0 and loop while the index is less than the length of the array. Note that the variable I is short for index. Okay, you ever wondered last year, why is Mr. Daniels writing for I in whatever in Python? I is just a quick way of writing it. It's a standard that a lot of people follow. And in the curriculum that I first taught a few years ago, I'm not going to name the curriculum, but it was saying you have to always name variables specifically, and you can never use I, you can never use X, you can never use Y. And I was like, doesn't make sense because programmers do that all the time, right? And the time you think of what should I name this variable, you can just write it I. It's so quick. It's a standard, just do it. So for I starts off as 0. Print out basically everything that's in here, right? Everything that's in the array. Here's an example, right? If I have high scores, 10, 9, 8, 11. I don't know what these are high scores for. What are these high scores for? What do you think? Basketball, like high scorers at the end of the game, right? Number of kills in a volleyball game. Number of saves. I guess goalies wouldn't make maybe that many saves in a game, right? Anyway, high scores. What I want to do is write a for loop, and it's just going to print out each high score. So rather than saying print high score index 0, print high scores index 1, high scores index 2, high scores index 3. Instead of going through this, you can write a for loop that says, hey, start at index 0, loop through until determine the score's length, right? As long as it's less than the length, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as it's less than 4, and then each time add 1. Okay, so that's how you would loop through and print each one. And look, high scores index I. We did that in many projects last year together in APCSP. We did it, especially I remember in the Wheel of Fortune project, we did it frequently. We also used it when we did tic-tac-toe and we were trying to get the right button to use. We put all the buttons in a list and then used, when you clicked on a button, it ran the same exact, rather than writing 9 different functions to run our code. What we did was we wrote one function that accepted a different argument, and that argument then dictated what actually changed and what button changed. So loops and arrays are very powerful. For loops and arrays, just like they fit nicely together, right? Typically, if you want to loop through an array, you're using a for loop. Okay. Using a variable as the index is a powerful data abstraction feature because it allows us to use loops with arrays where the loop counter variable is the index of the array. This allows our code to generalize, to work for the whole array. All right, next up, it says, what do you think the following code will print out? First, trace through it on paper. All right, so let's trace through it on paper. Okay, so it says Jamal, Emily, Destiny, Mateo, Sophia. Print out each of these. I don't think I need to use paper. It's just going to print out Jamal, Emily, Destiny, Mateo, Sophia. Because it starts at index 0. So I equals 0. Assign it names 0, prints out Jamal. Then the loop adds 1 to I. Names then index 1 is Emily, and so on. So I think it just prints out Jamal, Emily, Destiny, Mateo, Sophia. Let's check it out. That's what it does. I guess I gotta add 2 more names. I didn't read it. It says try then adding your name and a friend's name to the array names. Run the code again. So my name, Mr. Danza, and my friend's name is Mrs. Danza, my best friend. Ready, run it. Mr. Danza, Mrs. Danza got added to the end there. The code demonstrates that a loop changes, blah, blah, blah. We've done this before. You should know this. The array variables are referenced to an address in memory. Since arrays can be very large, we don't want to copy them when we pass them into methods. When an array is passed as an argument to a method, the name of the array refers to its address in memory. Therefore, any changes to the array in the method will affect the original array. Let's look at this. Okay. What does the following code print out? Trace through it, keeping track. See if you're right. Okay. I have a method called public static void mult all, and I'm passed in values and amount. And then there's a loop there that goes through it. So public static void print values, okay, is passed in whatever is then determined in values. And public static void main string args, here's where I start. Okay, so I have this num array. And inside I have 2, 6, 7, 12, and 5. Okay. I want to mult all, and I'm passing in this array, but I'm also passing in an argument of 2. So I'm passing in the array, and I'm passing an argument of 2 into mult all. So I go up and find mult all. The first array becomes known as values. And the int I passed in now becomes known as amount. So anytime you see AMT, AMT is 2. All right. So it says for each value in until you get to the end. So in the first value, I'm going to take whatever the value is, which is 2, and multiply it by 2. And I'm going to loop through all the values and do that. So 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 12 is 24. And 2 times 5 is 10. Where did I get those values? Those are the values that were put into there. So basically, I'm multiplying all of these values, thus mult all. I'm multiplying each of these by 2. Okay? So now, num array exists as 4, 12, 14, 24, 10. Okay? Notice it says, therefore, any changes to the array in the method will affect the original array. So we are affecting the original array. Now we're passing the new num array into print values. So print values goes through and prints out. It should print out 4, 12, 14, 24, 10. So it should print out 4, 12, 14, 24, 10. Sure enough, 4, 12, 14, 24, 10. So we took all these values right here and we multiplied each of them by 2. Arrays are Java objects, and when arrays are passed in as arguments to methods, any change to the array, it just said this above, but I'm guessing it's just trying to reiterate this. Let's do this code, okay? So first, I'm opening up public void sub all, and then I'm ending it. I then have, it says int values, I'm passing these in. So I'm going to go ahead and create, wonder how it'll let me do this. Oh, okay. So for loop starts off. That's my second being included in there. For I equals 0, assign the value of 0. Loop until we hit the end of the array. We add 1 each time. We're then going to open the for loop. We're going to add these values in there. And then we're going to end the loop. Check it. Well done. Okay. Making sure each time as it goes through, we are adding 1 to the amount. Looping from back to front. So let's say you want to traverse an array from the back of it to the front of it. You don't have to loop through an array from front to back. You can start at the back of the array, and so the end of the array, and move towards the beginning of it. In the example below, oh my gosh, what a method name. Why would you name your method that? Get index of last element smaller than target, right? Returns the index of the last element in the array that is smaller than the given argument. Please don't ever, if you ever like study this and like go to college or get a job, please don't ever name a method that. The return statement inside, like, let me see what I'd say, get, I don't know, that's too specific. I'm not even gonna try to mess with it. The return statement inside the loop stops the execution of the loop and the method and returns the index that is found immediately back to the main method. We've talked about this before. It says, what does the following code print out? Notice the array and the target are passed in as arguments. Trace through it and then run it to see if you're right. Okay. Wow. What a beauty. So we have a class called array find smallest. Then I've got this super long method here, which takes up a ton of space. I have a for loop. I'm starting with what the index is going to be, whatever the last value is, or sorry, the length of it is -1, because that will give you the last value, because we start counting at 0. And if array is 7 elements long and you want to start at the very last one, that would actually be index 6, right? Because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's why we're starting there. And as long as the index is greater than or equal to 0, keep subtracting 1. Okay. Then if says if the values of the index are less than the target, return index. Okay. So let's read through. Let's read through here. It says, this is our main method. The array is -30, -5, 8, 23, 46. Okay, the last index of element smaller than 50. Okay, so we're passing this in. We're passing in the array -30, -5, 8, 23, 46. And we're also passing in 50 as my second argument. So we want to find the last index of element smaller than 50. Okay. So you look at it, the last one that's smaller than 50 should actually be 46, right? So if we look at this, this is passed in. The index is what is accepted originally here. Values dot length. The length of it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So we're going to start with the fourth index. The fourth index is 46. As long as it's greater than 0, keep looping through. So the values of, the fourth index of values is 46. So is 46 less than the target? The target was 50. The answer is yes. So it should return 46. Okay. And that loops, and that then breaks you out of the loop. If for some reason it looped all the way through and there was not, it breaks you out of that method too. If there was not anything in there, it would return -1. Okay. So the last one, smaller than 50, we got 46. Let's just run this because I really don't feel like tracing through all of these. Okay. Last index smaller than 50 was 4. Oh, the index. We're returning the index. Okay. So instead of, instead of returning 46, it returns the index of 46. I get it. So index of 46, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It didn't return 46. It returned 4, which is the index of that in the array. That's the reason why. Index 4. So like the last index of elements smaller than -30, none of these values are smaller than -30, so return to -1. Last index smaller than -20, it says index 0 because it started at the back and just worked until it got there. Okay. What else does it want me to do? It says, can you add another method that finds the index of the last element greater than the target? And they also proposed a ridiculous name to name it.
That's also very.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll write this. I'll write public static. Go ahead and follow along. Int get index of last element greater than target. And I'm going to pass in does it want me to use the same array? Return a value like the method below. Yeah, we'll just use the same. We'll say int values, and then we'll have a target as well. Open and close this. And I'm going to copy all of this from lines 9 to 16. And I'm going to paste it here. And realize it says index of last element greater than target. So before it was index of last element less than the target. I'm going to see if values are greater than the target. We're subtracting 1 each time until it's 0. This should all remain the same. Okay, so that's what it would look like. Because as long as the value is greater, if the value is greater than the target, then return the index. All right, let's also see, it wants me to call the method at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and call this. And we'll pass in 2 values. So I'll pass in the array, and we'll pass in the target of 0. If that's a target that it wants me to pass in, let's see, and give it 2 arguments. And then maybe we just print it out. System.out.println. 2 . Looks something like that. Let's run it and see if we did it correctly. So it gave me 4. So that means that it started at the last one. The last value was 46. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is 46 greater than 0? Yeah. So it worked. Get index of last element greater than target. That's what I ended up doing. It worked. A lot. Like I said, please don't name your method that. Check for understanding. Given the following code segment, which is identical to the method above, what will be returned when you execute get index of last element smaller than target? Okay. So you're passing in values and -13. So you're passing in -20, -15, 2, 8, 16, 33. And you're passing in -13. Okay, when I get here, since I passed these two in to this, it looks at, this will be known as values. So my array will be known as values. And this int at the end will be known as comp. So -13 will be my comp. It says for I in values length -1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So values length -1, 6 minus 1 is 5. So I originally is initialized as 5. Probably because we're gonna do something with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As long as it's greater than or equal to 0, so we'll go all the way to the 0th index. I'm going to subtract 1 each time. If this last value 33 is less than compare, is 33 less than compare? No. So it says return, if it's not, if it is, then return this. So it's not. So we're going to go to the next one. Is 16 less than -13? No. Is 8 less than -13? No. Is 2 less than -13? No. Is -15 less than -13? Yes. Okay. And remember, I'm not returning -15 like I made the mistake before. We're not returning the number, we're returning the index. And the index is 0, 1. Okay. So the answer that I got here was C. And it's correct. Makes sense? Questions? Okay. It says, given the following code segment, which is not quite identical to the method above? What will be returned when you execute get index of last element smaller than target values 7? Okay, so I'm going to trace this again. The values that I'm passing in are -20, -15, 2, 8, 16, and 33. All right. I'm also passing in 7, which will be known as compa. What is it? Oh, I have to scroll. Compare. Guess I didn't scroll in the last one either. This is all I saw right there. I was like, what are they? Yeah. I guess I could have done it on the same other side too. Didn't realize that it scrolled that way. If they would have chose a better method name, then they wouldn't have to do that. Values.length. So my length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 minus 1, God bless you, is 5. Bless you. So we're starting off with I being assigned 5. As long as I is greater than or equal to 0, it's going to loop through, subtract 1 from it each time. Values of I5, so that would be 33. Is 33 less than 7? No. Is 16 less than 7? No. Is 8 less than 7? No. Is 2 less than 7? Yes, it is. So that would be index 0, 1, 2. Right? So I'm reading through the question, given the following code, which is not quite. So it's similar, but the answer should be 2. Up. Check the starting index is correct. So the starting index was I. Oh, values.length. We never subtracted from it. I see. Values.length. Why did I automatically I added in my head that it said -1. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So really it says values.length. So 6. I is initialized to 6. I misread that. So it should say, if it worked, it said values.length -1. This says values.length, right? So since we're then trying to find the 7th value, index 7, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, not. Sorry, the 6th value, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 values in here. Length would be 6. So value 6 would be out of bounds. So the answer is D. I don't know why I read that to say -1. Looping through part of an array. You don't have to loop through all the elements of an array. You can loop through just some of the elements of an array using a for loop. The following code doubles the first 5 elements in an array. Notice that it uses a complex conditional and on line 14 to make sure that the loop doesn't go beyond the length of the array. Because if you had an array that had less than 5 elements, you wouldn't want the code to try to double the 5th element, which doesn't exist. Notice that in this code, this array is a private instance variable of the class array worker. It is created in the constructor and changed and assessed by the methods. So you can loop through some of the elements of the array. What will it print out? Okay, let's look at this. So I have public class array worker, and I have an array called values. They've made it private. I also have public array worker, and in there I will eventually pass in the values. It will be received and stored as values. Okay, so this is my constructor. And then we're going to double the first 5 elements of the array. So you're going to loop through, and you're going to take the first 5 elements and loop through those. Okay. This is also, it says, write an array that triple first 4, that triples these. Oh, I guess first it wants us to write it, test it, and then the second time through triple it. So this will go through and double everything. So I'll go ahead and write this now. I'll copy this. It says write a method that triple. So I'll call this public triple first 4. Okay, this triples the first 4 elements of the array. So as long as I is less than 4, I'll remove this comment here. Okay, if it's you take I is less than dot length and I is less than 4. We're going to go ahead and take the value and we're going to triple it, so multiply it by 3. Okay, so I changed the method name. We're still starting at 0. We're going to go till it's less than the length and it's less than 4. That's how long we're going to go. And then we're going to also add 1 to it each time. Let's see if that works. Does it want me to call that method? Why is that indented there? I'll go ahead and move all these back 1 to line it up. You don't have to do this. I'm just very particular. At the very end, I'll say worker dot triple first 4. Does it want me to run that? I'll run it and see what happens. Did you run the double first 5 method? Oh, so here's what I'll do. I'll write this here at the bottom. So I'll take out that method call and I'll write it right there. And then print it out again for a second time. So it should say double first 5, print it, and then we'll triple first 4. We'll see if that's what it wants. Yeah. Okay. Here, you want to see it? So double first 5, triple first 4. Here's my code for triple first 4. Just changed up the method name, changed up I is less than 4 in the for loop, and then multiplied each value by 3. Okay. Does this work for arrays that have an even number of elements? Does it work for arrays with an odd number of elements? The answer is yes. Modify the main code below to test with both arrays with an even number of items and an odd number of items. Okay. So I ran it. Then maybe we add another item in here. So I can add it to, I don't know, add a 4 in the num array at the bottom here. So that way there's 5 elements in the array. So it works with even and odd. I'm not sure why they needed to say that, but check for understanding. We're gonna have to loop through this. We're gonna trace through it. So I'm gonna take this right here. It says, given the following values of A and the method double last, what will the values of A be after you execute double last? So I have an array called A, and inside of A, I have -20, -15, 2, 8, 16, and 33. Okay. I have a method called double last, and it's going to be initialized. I is going to be initialized as a dot length. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divided by 2. So initialized at 3. It's going to go as long as I is less than the end of the loop. Okay, so it's going to start at index 3 and go 1 each time. So starting at index 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3. So starting at 8 here, okay, for index 3, we're going to multiply 8 by 2. Okay, and this gives me 16. Okay. I'm then going to multiply 16, which is the next item of the array, by 2, which is 32, and the last one is 66. So what I got was negative 20 stays the same, negative 15 stays the same, 2 stays the same, but then the last 3 are doubled. Okay, so 8 will be 16, this will be 32, and this will be 66. So the first 3 stayed the same in C, and then we doubled the last 2. I think it's C. Correct. Given the following values of A and the method mystery, what will the values of A be after you execute mystery? All right, so the values are negative 20, negative 15, 2, 8, 16, and 33. Okay, starting at 0, it's going to go until we get whatever the length is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so I is starting off at 0. We're going to end it when it gets to as long as if I is less than 3. And each time we're going to add 2 to I. Okay, so starting off, it says index 0, which is the first one here, 20, negative 20. Okay, we're going to take negative 20 and multiply it by 2. Negative 20 times 2 is negative 40. Okay, then we're going to add 2 to it. So now my I is no longer 0. My I is now 2. Okay, is 2 less than 3? Yes. So we're going to continue. Okay. And with this, we'll say index 2 is going to be 0, 1, 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So this 2 that's right here is going to be 4. Okay. Then we're going to add 2 to it again, but it's not going to run this time. So my final values should be negative 40, negative 15, 4, 8, 16, 33. So negative 40, negative 15, 4, 8, 16, 33. I believe it's D. Correct. I can't do this stuff in my head. I have to write it out. Okay, the blocks in the wrong order. Looks like we're writing this method to reverse something. I'm going to go ahead and end the method. We're going to go ahead and set these variables in the beginning. We're going to open up our for loop. We're going to close our for loop. And what do we actually want this to do? It says the following is to reverse the elements in an array. Okay, so we have this variable called temp, and we assign it 0. It says int half is whatever the length is divided by 2. And then the max is whatever the length is minus 1. So we're going to loop through this. So we're starting off, as long as I is less than half. Are we going to only reverse the first half of the items in the array? We'll say, yeah, so we'll assign temp is assigned whatever that initial value is there, right? And then what we'll do is we will take let's see, a max minus 1 would be, in this case, well, it doesn't even give us the list, whatever the max would be minus whatever, or minus I, wherever we're at, assigned to the temp. And then A1 would then be assigned to A max minus I. Let's read through this, because half is halfway through. We divide it by 2. The max is the length. So let's do eventually we want this being stored in here. This AI equals, because that would then assign to the new index, max minus 1 is the temp. Flip these two, yeah? Because that would mean that we have max minus 1 or max minus I, which would be whatever the first index would be. Correct. So just to reiterate this and go back through it. So temp was 0. 0 is assigned to whatever, or sorry, 0 would be our first value and will be temporary. We then now that we have that temporary, we'll go through and take whatever this value is right here, the first value of the list, and then assign it to whatever the max was minus wherever we were at, and then loop through until we're able to change and reverse the entire list. It's a popular algorithm that's used. I guess for me, it would have been helpful if I would have had like, like what's actually in the list, because I'm a little, or in the array, what values are in the array. The following program has the correct code to return the average of the first 3 items in an array, but the code is mixed up. So the average of the first 3. So we're going to first starting off, opening up my method. We're then going to close it. I have my for loop. I'm going to go ahead and end my for loop. The double total will start off, looks like assign 0, and then total, whoops. Total will be whatever the total is plus whatever was before it. Originally, we have to declare the total starting off at 0 there. Ending the method. Oh, you have to indent them too. I didn't realize it wants you to indent them. I'll indent them as well. This is one of the first ones we've had where it's made you indent it, right? There have been some that made you indent it? Oh, well, I guess I might have just not followed that. And then end the method. There you go. I didn't realize it wanted me to indent it. I didn't yeah. Chromebook died. Yep, no worries. I didn't realize some of them have made us indent it before. Technically in Java, you didn't need to indent it. It wants you to indent it. Which ones made us indent before?
Same brand.
Really? Maybe I just naturally did it accidentally. 625 common errors when looping through an array. Is when processing all array elements, be careful to start at the first index, which is 0, and at the end of the last index. Usually loops are written so that the index starts at 0 and continues while the index is less than whatever the length is of the array. Okay. Make sure you do not use less than or equal to instead of less than. If the index is less than 0 or greater than array name dot length minus 1, an array index out of bounds exception will be thrown. off by one errors where you will go off the array by one element are easy to make when traversing an array, which result in an array index out of bounds exception being thrown. Okay. It says which of the following loop headers will cause an array index out of bounds error when traversing array scores. Okay. So starting off at 0, we're going to go until it's at the length, right? This will go too far. It would need to be length minus 1, right? This also will go too far. It would need to be length minus, well, I guess less than the length. If int starts at 1, if int I starts at 1, scores dot length.
Wait, didn't it say the ones with like greater than or equal to?
I see what it's asking here. Yeah, you're correct. So if it's less than the length, then that's fine. Okay. If it's less than or equal to the length, the equal to would then send it over. So it would be C. Okay. Going in the opposite direction here, if scores, if the length is greater than I, and then also scores length minus 1, you're starting with, my brain's not working here. You're starting with the length. Let's say it's a length of 7. You subtract 1, which would be 6, as long as I is greater than equals 0, greater than or equal to 0, keep adding. Eventually, you would run out, I assume, on this one. Let's look at this one. Scores dot length is greater than I plus plus. Would it be D as well? Scores dot length is greater than I, and you keep adding. Just C and E. Okay. Was just making sure D, that the change of the greater than and less than threw me off there, but it was still correct. C and E. All right. The following code has an array index out of bounds exception. It has 2 common off by 1 errors in the loop. Can you fix it and make the loop print out all scores? Okay. So we'll make it less than here. And we also want to start counting at 0. Let's try that. All right, so the 2 things I changed, I is assigned 0, and I is less than scores dot length, not less than or equal to. And it goes through all that. Let's see how many more we have here. How much time we got left in class?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. We'll do this one. What is wrong with the code below? The first time through the loop, it will start with an element at index 0 and check if the item at array index equals the past target string. If they have the same characters in the same order, it will return 0. Otherwise, it will return -1. But it has only processed one element of the array. How would you fix the code to work properly? Process all elements of the array before returning. Okay, so let's look through this. So I have an array, hello, hey, good morning. Look like they're all greetings. Find string, you have a target. And I'm just gonna look through down here. I create a new instance of the string worker class. And I say, find string hey. This then goes up to find string. It's passed in hey, so hey will be my target. Okay? Says string word is starting off null. For my loop here, it says index is 0 as long as the index is less than the array length. Continue. The word equals array index 0, right? The word that was passed in once again is hey. So my target, I'll just write hey next to it to remember. If word equals target, word is assigned just the array of index 0. So in this case right here, word is assigned just, there's capital H in hey. So in this, it's assigned, word is assigned just the H. Does H equal the target? No. Anything else, return -1. So if they have the same characters in there, so it loops through, okay, it'll return -1. How would you fix the code correctly to process all array elements before returning? Do we maybe want to comment these lines out? Okay. And each time go through every single letter. So pass in H. So we're looping through word. If word equals target, return the index. Why would we need to loop through to determine this? I'm not sure why we would need to loop through every single letter in order to figure that out. Is that what it wants us to do though? The first time through the loop, it will start in the element at index 0 and check if the item at the array index equals the passed target string. Oh, at each item in here. I see, I see. So this array, private string array. So, okay, R index 0. Gotcha, 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 gotcha. So it's saying, is hello the same as the target, which is not. So it would then go back through to the second one and see. So let me run this right here and let's see what we get. And we passed. So all we had to do was comment out, or you can just take out lines 16 through 19. Okay. Because what it was doing is it would have returned -1 after only going through one element. We didn't want that. We wanted to go through multiple ones. So I took out this else. And then if it's not in there at all, if the value is not in there, then it will return